Imagine hearing three of the country's best doctors declare the most powerful mafia boss in Seattle dead, while the only person who refuses to believe them is the curvy maid everyone ignores. Doctors called Adrian Romano dead. His enemies prepared for war. His own empire moved on. But one overlooked housemaid, Emily Carter, noticed something no one else did. While everyone walked away from the man they believed was gone forever, she stayed beside him through the longest night of her life. What happened before sunrise would expose betrayal, rewrite the fate of a powerful family, and prove that sometimes the person everyone looks down on is the only one who can save everything. At 11:47 p.m., the heart monitor in the Romano Estate Clinic became one unbroken tone. Rain struck the underground windows while three surgeons stood over Adrian Romano, Seattle's most feared man, and stepped back. "Doctor." Malcolm Reeves removed his gloves. "Time of death, 11:47. The words crossed the glass wall like a gunshot. Men in black suits froze beneath the cold lights. Phones appeared. Orders were whispered. Above them, doors slammed and engines started as the mansion shifted from panic into war. Adrian Romano was dead, and the city might bleed before sunrise. Emily Carter remained beside the linen cart. Her gray uniform hugged her full figure. The guards looked through her as if she were furniture. For years, she had cleaned their rooms, carried their trays, and endured jokes about her body. Tonight, no one noticed the tears on her face. Through the glass, Adrian lay beneath a white sheet, his dark hair damp. Hours earlier, he had entered a charity gala before cameras and powerful men. Now 3 doctors had declared him beyond saving. "He isn't gone," Emily whispered. A younger surgeon turned. "Excuse me?" "I said he isn't gone." He gave a tired laugh. "You're a maid. Leave medicine to people who understand it." The insult burned, but she stayed. She remembered the night Adrian had stopped a drunken manager from humiliating her in the kitchen. He had not offered comfort. He had only said, "No one in my house is treated as less than human." Now the people who claimed loyalty to him were already planning revenge and succession. When the clinic emptied, Emily slipped inside before the steel door locked. The room was bitter cold. She approached the table, pulled back the sheet, and wrapped both hands around Adrian's right hand. His skin was cool, but it was not rigid. Emily held her breath. Beneath her thumb, one of his fingers gave the faintest answering twitch. She jerked back, staring at Adrian's still face. The room remained silent, except for the low hum of refrigeration and rain tapping against the narrow basement windows. The monitor had already been switched off. No machine could tell her whether she had imagined it. "Please," she whispered, taking his hand again. "If you're still here, don't give up." Hours earlier, before sirens and whispered orders filled the mansion, Emily Carter had started her morning the same way she always did. She left the tiny duplex where she had cared for her late mother, boarded an aging city bus through South Seattle, and arrived at the Romano estate before sunrise. The marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers, but no one ever looked at the woman polishing them. The kitchen staff joked that she blocked the doorway. A guard once laughed that she should use 2 chairs instead of 1. Emily answered every cruel remark with quiet dignity and kept working. She knew what it felt like to be judged before saying a single word. Yet every afternoon, she slipped fresh flowers into the guest rooms, carried leftovers to an elderly groundskeeper, and secretly paid for the cook's grandson's asthma medicine after overhearing a worried phone call. She never told anyone. Adrian Romano noticed more than people believed. One evening, he walked into the service hallway, just as a hotel manager mocked Emily's size in front of the staff. Adrian said only one sentence: "Collect your paycheck and leave my property." The manager was gone before sunset. He never apologized to Emily or asked for thanks. Instead, he accepted the coffee she offered and nodded once before walking away. Somehow that silent respect stayed with her longer than 1,000 compliments ever could. Now the same man lay motionless beneath her trembling hands. Emily looked toward the locked steel door, then back at Adrian. Outside, somewhere above the clinic, a distant burst of gunfire echoed through the rain-soaked night. The sound rolled through the stone walls like thunder. Somewhere inside the mansion, loyal men were already choosing sides. If Adrian Romano truly was dead, the empire he had built would not mourn for long. It would fight. Emily forced herself to breathe. She gently laid his hand back on the blanket and looked around the silent operating room. Stainless steel trays still held blood-stained gauze. A discarded surgical mask rested beside an empty vial marked with a barcode she couldn't read. Everything had happened too fast. Just hours earlier, a helicopter had landed on the estate lawn under flashing floodlights. Adrian had been rushed inside while security agents sealed every entrance. Emily had helped clear the corridor, catching only brief glimpses of pale doctors shouting for plasma and oxygen as the elevator disappeared beneath the mansion. She remembered carrying fresh blankets into the clinic when two exhausted surgeons argued outside the operating room. The antidote should have been here 40 minutes ago. It never arrived. Their voices had dropped the moment they noticed her. Back then, Emily assumed it was another secret she wasn't meant to hear. Now those words echoed louder than the rain. She stepped closer to Adrian again. His face remained still, but the gray color that usually followed death didn't seem complete. His fingertips were cool, yet strangely flexible. During the nursing classes she had abandoned years ago to care for her sick mother, one instructor had repeated a simple lesson: the body always tells the truth. Emily had never forgotten it. A metallic click suddenly broke the silence. Someone was unlocking the outer security door. She slipped behind a storage cabinet just as Vincent Ross entered with Dr. Reeves. Neither man noticed her hidden in the shadows. "Seal every medical record," Vincent said quietly. "No copies, no exceptions." Dr. Reeves hesitated. "And if anyone asks questions?" Vincent's expression hardened. "They'll be told the boss died before the antidote ever reached Seattle." Emily's heart pounded. Something about that answer sounded rehearsed. She stayed perfectly still behind the storage cabinet until Vincent and Dr. Reeves disappeared through the security door. The heavy lock clanged shut again, leaving only the whisper of the ventilation system and the relentless rain above the mansion. Emily stepped back into the dim light, her pulse refusing to slow. If the antidote had never reached Seattle, why had the doctors argued that it was late instead of missing? The contradiction settled deep inside her mind. She returned to Adrian's bedside. The room felt colder now, cold enough to sting her lungs. A digital display on the wall showed the temperature dropping another degree, preserving a body everyone believed had already been lost. Emily gently touched his wrist again. Still cool, still strangely flexible. Fragments of old nursing lectures resurfaced, memories she had buried after leaving school to care for her mother through years of illness. Her instructor had warned the class never to trust appearances alone. Observe first, panic later. So she observed. His lips had not darkened the way she remembered from clinical training. His fingertips still carried the faintest hint of color. She leaned closer and spoke softly, feeling foolish and determined at the same time. "I know you can't answer me, But if you're still fighting, I'm staying. She searched a nearby cabinet until she found 2 thick thermal blankets meant for recovering patients. Ignoring every rule, she draped them over Adrian and gently rubbed his hands between her own, hoping only to slow the relentless chill swallowing the room. Minutes became an hour. The mansion above remained restless. Distant footsteps crossed marble floors. Elevator motors groaned. Somewhere men argued about revenge while the one man worth protecting lay alone beneath fluorescent lights. Emily refused to leave. Her shoulders ached. Her eyes burned with exhaustion. Yet every few minutes she checked his breathing, watched his face, and whispered another quiet promise into the silence. Then it happened. Not a heartbeat. Not yet. Just the smallest flutter beneath the skin of his wrist, so faint it could have been nothing at all. Emily closed her eyes, placed 2 careful fingers over his pulse again, and prayed she hadn't imagined it. There. A weak rhythm brushed against her fingertips before fading into silence. She refused to panic. Instead, she hurried to the abandoned monitoring station and pressed the power button. The screen flickered once, then remained dark. She checked the cable connected to Adrian's chest, secured the loose lead, and tried again. A thin green line crawled across the display. Nothing. Then a single beep shattered the stillness. Emily froze. Another tiny spike appeared. It was slow, uneven, almost impossible to believe. But it was there. "Oh, thank you," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. She reached for the emergency phone, then stopped. Vincent's words echoed in her memory. Seal every medical record. No copies. No exceptions. If someone wanted Adrian dead, calling the wrong person first could finish what the poison had started. Emily grabbed another thermal blanket and tucked it tightly around him. She gently rubbed warmth back into his hands and spoke with quiet determination. "You stayed for me once. Now I'm staying for you." The monitor answered with another fragile tone. Minutes later, footsteps thundered outside the clinic. Dr. Reeves rushed inside, followed by 2 nurses. His eyes widened at the screen. "That's impossible." The heartbeat grew stronger. Within seconds, the room exploded into motion. Oxygen returned. Fresh medication was prepared. A nurse checked Adrian's pupils while another adjusted the IV. Emily stepped back, unnoticed as the doctors reclaimed the room they had abandoned. Then Adrian's eyelids trembled. Slowly, painfully, they opened. His blurred gaze wandered across the bright lights, the frightened faces, and finally settled on the woman standing quietly near the wall. For one long moment, neither of them spoke. Recognition flickered across his exhausted expression. Before anyone could ask another question, Adrian lifted one trembling hand. His voice was barely louder than a whisper. "Everyone, out." The doctors exchanged confused looks. Adrian never took his eyes off Emily. Except her. The room fell silent. Dr. Reeves hesitated before signaling everyone toward the door. Nurses gathered their equipment. Security guards exchanged uneasy glances, and Vincent Ross lingered a second longer than the others. His sharp eyes settled on Emily, measuring her, before the heavy steel door closed behind him. For the first time that night, Adrian allowed himself to breathe without an audience. His voice was weak, barely more than air. "You stayed." Emily lowered her eyes. "I couldn't leave." "You knew." "I only knew something didn't feel right." A faint smile crossed Adrian's tired face before disappearing beneath exhaustion. Dr. Reeves quietly stepped back into the room to examine him. After several long minutes, he removed his stethoscope and looked stunned. I've reviewed every scan, he admitted. The antidote finally reached your bloodstream. It should have been too late. He turned toward Emily. Keeping his body warm prevented his organs from shutting down completely. You unknowingly extended the window just long enough. Emily stared in disbelief. I only covered him with blankets. You gave the medicine time to work. The doctor's words settled over the room like sunlight after a storm. Adrian looked at Emily again, not as someone employed to clean his home, but as the woman standing between him and death. When Dr. Reeves left, Adrian waited until the hallway was quiet. My poisoning wasn't an accident, he whispered. Emily looked up. Someone delayed the antidote on purpose. She remembered the argument between the surgeons and Vincent ordering every medical record sealed. I heard them talking, she admitted carefully. They said the antidote arrived late. Adrian nodded slowly. Exactly. He struggled to sit higher against the pillows. If the people responsible learn I'm alive, they'll disappear before I can expose them. Emily understood what he was asking before he spoke the words. I need the world to believe I died tonight. Silence stretched between them. If anyone discovers you're helping me, Adrian said softly, you'll become their first target. Emily's hands trembled. Then she met his eyes without looking away. If telling the truth can save your life, she said, I'll stay. Outside the clinic, a security camera quietly captured a shadow slipping into the hospital records room. By sunrise, Adrian Romano was officially dead. Black vehicles filled the estate. Flowers arrived by the truckload. Reporters gathered beyond the gates while whispers of retaliation spread across Seattle. Behind closed doors, however, Adrian was quietly moved through an old service tunnel beneath the property and driven to a secluded lakeside house known only to a handful of trusted people. Emily rode beside him in silence. The cabin overlooked a gray lake wrapped in morning fog. It was simple, almost forgotten, nothing like the marble halls of the Romano estate. For the first time in years, Adrian slept without armed guards standing outside his bedroom door. The following days settled into an unexpected rhythm. Emily prepared soup, changed fresh bandages, and carefully followed every instruction Dr. Reeves secretly delivered. She never treated Adrian like a legend. She reminded him to rest, argued when he tried walking too soon, and laughed quietly when he insisted he was already strong enough to leave his bed. You've always been this stubborn, she asked. I built an empire that way. You almost lost it the same way. For a moment, Adrian actually smiled. It was small, uncertain, and gone almost as quickly as it appeared. Meanwhile, inside Romano headquarters, Vincent Ross quietly took control. He spoke confidently at meetings, comforted grieving employees, and assured everyone he would protect Adrian's legacy. At the same time, carefully edited photographs began appearing on anonymous websites. Emily carrying food. Emily entering Adrian's private wing. Emily standing beside his hospital room. The captions claimed she had manipulated the Mafia Boss for money long before his death. Within hours, gossip spread through the estate. Servants who once ignored her now whispered openly whenever her name was mentioned. Emily pretended not to care, but alone each evening, the words found their way into her heart. Late one night, Adrian noticed tears she thought she had hidden. He said nothing. Instead, he quietly placed a folded blanket over her shoulders before returning to his room. Outside, hundreds of miles away, someone downloaded the erased hospital records from a hidden backup server. Emily barely slept after that. Dawn spread across the quiet lake, turning the water silver while Adrian rested upstairs. She brewed coffee, organized his medication, and tried to ignore the rumors flooding every newsfeed. According to the headlines, she had manipulated the late Mafia Boss for wealth and influence. Strangers judged a woman they had never met. Adrian found her staring through the kitchen window. "You don't have to read any of it," he said. "I wish it stopped hurting." "It won't," he replied honestly. "Not until the truth speaks louder." Those words stayed with her. Later that afternoon, Dr. Reeves secretly delivered a copy of Adrian's treatment log. Emily studied every page, comparing medication times with what she had overheard the night of the poisoning. One entry refused to fit. The antidote carried a batch number different from the one recorded in the official report. "It shouldn't be possible," she murmured. Adrian leaned closer. "Unless someone changed the records." The next morning, Emily insisted on verifying the number herself. Wearing an ordinary coat and baseball cap, she slipped into the private hospital through a service entrance she remembered from years before. Most employees ignored her, assuming she belonged to housekeeping. Inside the archive room, she located the pharmaceutical inventory. The original barcode had been replaced. Someone had edited the digital record days before the charity gala. Emily photographed the screen with her phone just as footsteps echoed in the hallway. She hurried toward the rear exit, but two unfamiliar men appeared outside the loading dock. They watched her too carefully. Without thinking, Emily crossed into the crowded streets of Seattle's historic district. Rain poured from the gray sky as she hurried between brick buildings and morning shoppers. The men followed without speaking. Her heartbeat thundered. She turned another corner and nearly slipped on the wet pavement. A black SUV stopped beside her. The passenger door swung open. Before the strangers could reach her, Adrian stepped out, very much alive. Every plan they had built shattered in a single moment. By sunset, whispers spread across Seattle. The dead king had returned. As Adrian drove them away, his phone vibrated with a secure message containing a newly recovered audio recording. He pressed play. A second voice joined Vincent's. "I've already altered the medical records," the man said. "No one will question the timeline." Emily and Adrian exchanged a silent look. "Who is that?" she whispered. Adrian's expression hardened. "I don't recognize the voice, but Vincent never trusted outsiders unless they could profit him." The recording ended with the sound of a door closing. Back at the lakeside house, Emily spread every piece of evidence across the dining table. Treatment logs, photographs of the altered barcode, handwritten notes, and copies of pharmacy shipments covered the wood like the pieces of a difficult puzzle. Adrian watched without interrupting. For the first time in years, he allowed someone else to lead. Hours passed. Then Emily noticed something no one else had. The replacement batch number matched a shipment delivered nearly a week before the gala, not the emergency antidote supposedly flown into Seattle that night. "So the records weren't changed afterward," she said quietly. "They were changed before Adrian was poisoned." Adrian leaned closer, meaning whoever planned this expected the attack. The missing piece arrived the next morning. An elderly nurse named Margaret called Dr. Reeves after seeing Emily's photograph on the news. Years earlier, Emily had quietly helped pay for Margaret's husband's heart medication when insurance refused coverage. Margaret had never forgotten. She agreed to meet in secret. Inside a small church office, Margaret handed Emily a notebook she had kept hidden at home. "I wrote everything down," she said. "I couldn't trust the hospital computers." Every medication delivered that week had been listed by hand. One entry had been crossed out. Another batch number had been written over it. Emily compared the notebook with the hospital records. They forged everything. Margaret nodded sadly. And Vincent wasn't alone. She revealed that Adrian's former fiancé had visited the pharmacy office twice before the gala, accompanied by a physician who later approved the altered inventory without explanation. The conspiracy was larger than any of them imagined. That evening, Adrian gathered the documents and placed them back into Emily's hands. "I've trusted power my entire life," he said. "Now I trust you." Emily looked at the final missing note in Margaret's notebook. It mentioned one last document: the original inventory report. Its storage location was written beside it: Romano Estate, Private Vault. The words lingered in Emily's mind as she and Adrian returned to the mansion before dawn. Hidden beneath a delivery truck, they slipped through an old service entrance that few people still remembered. The grand hall was draped in black for Adrian's memorial, its chandeliers dimmed beneath heavy fabric. Portraits of the Romano family watched over a house pretending to mourn a man who was quietly walking its hidden corridors. Adrian stopped before a steel door concealed behind the library shelves. "The vault hasn't been opened since my father died," he said. Emily entered the code he recited from memory. The lock released with a deep metallic click. Inside, rows of ledgers, legal files, and encrypted drives filled polished shelves. Emily searched methodically, ignoring the priceless watches and rare artwork stored beside them. Near the back, she found a sealed envelope marked with the same pharmaceutical batch number Margaret had written in her notebook. She opened it carefully. The original inventory report had never been altered. Someone had replaced only the digital record. Adrian looked at the document and slowly exhaled. "This proves everything." Before they could leave, footsteps echoed above them. Vincent's voice drifted through the library. Emily quickly photographed every page before returning the file exactly where she had found it. Hours later, Romano Tower hosted an emergency shareholders meeting. Executives, attorneys, and family advisors gathered beneath floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle. Rumors filled the room until the main doors opened. Adrian Romano walked inside. Silence crashed over the audience. Several people stood in disbelief. One woman gasped. Vincent's face lost all color before he forced a smile that convinced no one. Adrian crossed the room without hurry. "The lies end today," he said calmly. He called Emily forward. She hesitated only a moment before joining him. "This woman did not exploit me," Adrian continued. "She saved my life when everyone else believed I was beyond saving. Anyone who insults her insults me. Anyone unwilling to respect her is free to leave the Romano family now." No one moved. Emily lifted her head higher than she ever had before. For the first time, she felt seen. But as security searched Vincent's office minutes later, every financial file had disappeared. Only one message remained on his desk. Midnight, Romano Harbor. Fog drifted across the dark water as cargo cranes stood motionless against the Seattle skyline. The air smelled of salt and rain. Emily stepped from the SUV beside Adrian, clutching a small flash drive inside her coat pocket. She had copied every genuine hospital record before anyone could erase them again. A warehouse door rolled open. Vincent Ross walked into the light with two familiar faces beside him. Adrian's former fiancée stood calm and composed, while the physician who had approved the altered inventory carried a briefcase filled with forged financial files. "You should have stayed dead," Vincent said. Adrian remained silent. Emily answered instead. "You planned everything before the gala. The poison, the delayed antidote, even the fake medical records." Vincent smiled. "Can you prove it?" Emily removed the flash drive. The originals were backed up before your edits. The doctor's confidence disappeared. Emily continued, her voice steady despite the cold wind. The handwritten inventory, the pharmacy logs, the surveillance footage, and your recorded conversations all match. Every change points to the same 3 people. She handed a folder to Adrian's attorney, who had quietly arrived with federal investigators waiting beyond the dock. Vincent looked toward the rival crime representatives he had expected to impress. Instead of supporting him, they slowly stepped away. No one wanted to stand beside a man who had betrayed his own family and failed. Realizing he had lost, Vincent threw the forged files onto the wet pavement. They'll never believe her. Adrian finally spoke. They already do. Blue lights reflected across the harbor as federal agents entered the warehouse. Without resistance, the physician lowered his head. Adrian's former fiancée quietly surrendered. Vincent looked once more at the empire he had tried to steal before officers escorted him away. The harbor fell silent. Emily released a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Adrian turned toward her. For years I believed fear kept people loyal, he said softly. You proved kindness is stronger. He hesitated, emotion replacing the certainty that had always defined him. There's one truth I've never been brave enough to say. Emily met his eyes. Before she could answer, the first light of dawn began to rise over the water. Golden light spread across Romano Harbor, washing away the night's shadows. Adrian smiled with a gentleness few people had ever witnessed. I spent my life building an empire, he said quietly. You reminded me that a life is measured by the people we protect, not the power we hold. Emily felt tears gather, but this time they carried no shame. Months passed. The headlines that once questioned her character now told a different story. Vincent Ross, the corrupt physician, and Adrian's former fiancée all faced justice through the evidence Emily had preserved. The Romano organization began closing illegal operations and investing instead in businesses that brought honest work back to neighborhoods too often forgotten. On the south side of Seattle, a new building opened its doors. Above the entrance, carved into polished stone, were the words, "The Margaret Carter Community Emergency Center." Emily stopped beneath the sign bearing her mother's name. For a long moment, she simply looked at it, remembering the woman whose illness had forced her to leave nursing school years before. You finished what she hoped for, Adrian said. Emily had done exactly that. She returned to school, completed her nursing degree, and became director of the Romano Foundation's medical outreach program. Every week, she welcomed families who reminded her of the life she once lived, greeting each person with the same quiet kindness that had changed her own future. During the dedication ceremony, employees, neighbors, physicians, and members of the Romano family gathered together. Adrian stepped to the podium. The strongest person I have ever known never carried a title, he said. She carried compassion when others carried pride. Emily Carter saved my life. More than that, she saved my family from becoming everything we once feared. The crowd rose in applause. Emily looked around and recognized faces that had once ignored her. Now they smiled with respect instead of judgment. Adrian reached for her hand. No grand promises were needed. Together they walked toward the quiet lakeside home that had first taught them to trust one another. Their future had not been built by wealth or fear. It had been built by kindness strong enough to change 2 lives and an entire legacy. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. When Adrian Romano stood before everyone and thanked Emily Carter for saving not only his life, but the future of his family. It wasn't power that filled the room. It was gratitude. Sometimes the quietest person becomes the one whose courage echoes the longest. This story reminds us that the people who stand beside us when no one else will are often the ones who change our lives forever. Trust isn't created by promises. It's earned through small, faithful actions when they matter most. If someone in your life has stood by you the way Emily stood by Adrian, don't assume they already know how much they mean to you. Tell them today, because sincere gratitude can strengthen a relationship in ways success or money never will. Have you ever had someone believe in you when everyone else had given up? I'd love to read your story in the comments. And if Emily's journey stayed with you, don't miss the next story. Because sometimes the most unexpected act of courage begins with someone the world never notices.